So good morning for those of you who are in the morning zone. Good evening to those of you who are on the other side of the world and it's evening for you. And good day to you for those of you who are a little bit ahead of us in terms of time at Europe, Central Time in Europe. I'm Lloyd Scott. I'm delighted to welcome you to the 37th annual conference. We pride ourselves in ARCOM that we try to meet face to face, but with the continued pandemic, for the second year we have a virtual conference, and we're hoping over the next 2 days to spend a really quality time with you, addressing the actual theme of the conference, which is recover, rebuild and renew, shifting mindsets and practices to change the future. And certainly this gathering and the work that people have done behind the scenes and the research work that people have submitted will actually address changing mindsets and practices to change the future. And I'm looking forward to the next 2 days, sharing the next 2 days with you. As you will be aware, a lot of work has gone on behind the scenes to make this a memorable ARCOM event, and we're looking forward to spending the couple of days with you. I am the chair of the conference committee, but I'm also, for the last year, have been the chair of ARCOM, the actual group. So I'm delighted to be sharing with you the fruits of our labours over the last year or so. Just a couple of elements in relation to the 2 days. The platform that we have this year is building on the iVent platform we had last year. We've had a lot of work behind the scenes, and this is our own conference platform, and the activities here are all managed by ARCOM. So we have put in place a system and an approach that really tries to capture the essence of what we're about in ARCOM. We have support structures, but one element I'd like to draw your attention to, if you haven't already done so, Google Chrome is probably the best system to be operating the platform from. It's most compatible with Google Chrome. There is a support structure within the conference. There is IT support. We have great support from our IT consultant, Kat O'Connell, but also Chris Nielsen, who would have been in contact with you throughout the preparations for this event. So if you have issues, please go into the main page and seek out their support in terms of any issues you have around the platform. We hope that everybody will have good connection, good connectivity wherever you are in the world. And again, if there's any issues, please seek to try and ameliorate that with the IT support team. Last year, we got feedback in relation to the cafe. We had the cafe actually open only when the proceedings weren't taking place. We got feedback from the attendees last year that they would like to see the cafe open throughout the conference. And again, the cafe now is open throughout the conference. So if it's a case that you would like to interact with somebody, why not meet them in the cafe? And that'll be an opportunity for you to interact with people. Also, you've signed up for your presentations and the keynote addresses by actually broadcast post-conference on ARCOM's YouTube channel. So I'd encourage you to actually promote that, because your work will be promoted then, and it'll be an opportunity for people to see further the quality work that actually ARCOM does and continues to do. So this morning, during the event, we have 2 days of presentations. We have 7 parallel sessions. We have opportunities for people to share their knowledge. We have 2 plenary sessions with 4 keynote speakers. We have the Langford event. We have continued on with the Meet the Publishers event. And I know the Rutledge group are present at the conference. So if you want to go in and meet Ed Needles from the Rutledge, Taylor and Francis group, by all means do so. We're not joined this year by Emerald or Wiley, but they do have elements of support included in the publication and resource area in the main foyer. We have an award ceremony bringing our conference to a close. And again, that's a real tradition of ARCOM in terms of celebrating the real quality work that has been done in relation to people's research papers. And also then I'd encourage people to come along to the ARCOM AGM tomorrow around lunchtime. So leading now into this morning's plenary session, I'd like to just mention tomorrow's plenary session in relation so the plenary session tomorrow is a session that actually looks at the connect between urban planning and construction management, and that session tomorrow will be chaired by Craig Thompson, our secretary on the ARCOM committee, and we look forward to that session tomorrow. Today's session is what I thought might be a really good kickoff to the conference. It's construction management research towards a better understanding. And I really thought of it from the whole notion of renew, rebuild, and regenerate. And I thought about it from actually having that discussion around construction management research, where we've come from, where we're going to, where it is we might consider going to. And what I did was, in my thinking, I actually decided to actually ask two researchers to present to you their position in relation to construction management research. So I'm delighted to welcome Professor Chris Gorse from Leeds Sustainable Institute, Leeds Beckett University, and Dr. Tara Brooks from Queen's University, School of the Built Environment at Queen's. And they're going to give their perspective. We have pre-recorded presentations. So we'll go into that. And following that, then we'll open the floor up for discussions and contributions in relation to some questions and maybe some discussion around where it is actually we might go to, or where it is we have views on. So without further ado, I'll just load the presentation for Chris Gorse.
Hello, my name's Chris Gorse, and I'd like to share with you my thoughts on the future of construction management. The first question that others and I raise is, does the practice of construction management have professional scope, shape? Is there an associated body of knowledge or a school of thought? What body of science, scholarship, branch of education should we sign up to? As a subject and area of research, while building and shaping the environment to serve human purposes represents the oldest practice of modern Homo sapien, as a field of research it is one of the most immature, and so we should look towards the other fields such as medicine and science to help guide and shape our craft. We should ensure that research of construction and construction management is distinctive and professionally robust. We should seek to develop training specialisms that are equally distinctive, that are valued and used. So what is construction management? For me, it's the organisation of resource, including people, materials and products, acting within economic, legislative, welfare and social limitations to deliver a built resource. Embracing the art of management, materials and environment, science, and utilising the knowledge within our construction decision-making capacity. It's underpinned through social, environmental and ecological ethics and morals. I tend to think about building in its broadest terms as a science, an art and a journey that involves fashion, culture and society as a major contributor to its decision making. While many want to challenge the scope of construction, they fail to consider the role and influence of the built environment. In short, it is integral in almost everything we do. It shapes who we think we are, what we aspire to, What we construct in our world, in our structures, in our thoughts, our beliefs, are heavily influenced by the land and the builtscape that we construct. Our actions as constructors of the built environment are currently leading to our destruction, pollution of the planet, extinction of the natural world and species on which we rely. Constructors need a good moral compass, and research should address how we reason with that which is not legislated, as well as that which is. We can divide construction into construction and construction management, construction into buildings, engineer, design, assembly, coordination, materials, chemicals, people and processes. Management into estimating, legislating, standardizing, regulating, valuing and leading, planning and communicating. But is that all? No, construction management is not limited to the domains that I've mentioned. It relies on attributes of other fields, infrastructures and specialist areas. The following are just some touch points which may be considered all part of construction management, including knowledge management, even the management of disasters, controlling of flooding, geotechnics, earthquakes and tsunamis, chemistry, biology, physics, management of fire, design of structures to withstand fire, safety in terms of mental safety, physical safety, environmental safety, regulation. Multimedia plays an immense part now in our practices of construction management, as does artificial intelligence, engineering for operational management, sociology, psychology, possibly criminology, life cycle analysis, environmental impact, social value and building pathology, amongst a few of touch points which construction management can and should embrace within its research. Communication, listening and learning is central to the task of construction management, equally using others to do what you can't, using others to engage, influence and communicate and listen. Where we do not possess the relationship skills to engage, we should use others to engage for us, to make things work. Our skills are always limited, and we need to embrace and surround ourselves by those with skills which make us better construction managers. We remain in a knowledge economy. As construction managers, our key activity is to manage knowledge and to use it to shape the building. The future for the knowledge worker is probably more significant than it has ever been. We have more information at our fingertips. We can request by voice, touch or even movement, but it must be recalled, synthesized, brought together to inform decision making. Artificial intelligence is enhancing our environment, but is also challenging the knowledge worker, increasing the level of information that is available to us and that we are expected to understand. Remind ourselves that there is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. Peter Drucker. I've often heard of others belittling the importance of science and materials in construction management, suggesting that we can manage anything and we don't need to concern ourselves with these specialisms. While I would uphold the importance of a specialist and need to seek specialist advice, the construction professional should have a good grasp of the field, be able to understand, communicate and develop trust in the specialist, and even challenge specialists and specialist advice. It is clear that there are many gaps in others' knowledge and of our construction trades, technical trades, engineers, designers and professionals. The importance of trusted professionals and trades remains strong, and the need to ensure that those entering the markets have the right skills, knowledge and education is paramount. We need to learn the relationship skills. We cannot know everything. We cannot read all the reports. I'm often challenged by some of the things that I should know. But then we need to educate and understand is paramount and build the relationships that we need to support us. We need to remind ourselves who we are building for and why we are building. Is the management process working? Is it necessary? There are so many attributes to building, so many stakeholders, investors and beneficiaries, and also those that might suffer as a consequence of the built environment. All of those so-called actors, those affected by construction, come under the umbrella of construction management research. The research excellence framework that takes place in the UK in our universities, within our schools of the built environment, is so wide in breadth and application. It always amazes me the scope of research that is taking place within our schools of the built environment. We're living in an ongoing pandemic. And while I don't hold our governments responsible for the pandemic, I do think that there is a real failure in the lack of foresight and ability to ensure that we have the right resources and reserves in place so that our economy is not so adversely affected. Clearly, we are lacking in governance and leadership. The impact of COVID, the Suez Canal and Brexit are lessons. They are not a perfect storm, but represent a lack of foresight, education and research. Planning for the unknown can only be delivered through what you have in the bank, the surplus that you don't know if you need, the research that seemed to be blue sky. To have something in the bank, you enables you to have flexibility in the system. You have to have reserves and resource. There is nothing wrong with lean, but what is currently happening is the upskilling and educating of some, while at the same time leaving others uneducated and de-skilled. It will take generations to re-engage the disinfected, but it is necessary so that we don't exhaust those that are currently working. Never underestimate the ability of our people from all sectors and all walks of life. There are many benefits from COVID. COVID brought about change, tested the resilience of the industry. It scaled up and transformed our technologies, our multimedia service, our ability to communicate, our ability to respond to scarce resources. Currently, government are stepping in to stimulate the market where private investment does not have the confidence to move forward. Research is moving forward to transform, accelerate and respond, and to be smart. We have significantly upgraded our smart infrastructure, but there's much to do. The Townsend International Construction Market Survey is interesting. It reflects our construction management research. We're responding to complexity, challenging macroeconomics, multiple competing goals and priorities, hybrid working patterns, social value, net zero, supply chain constraints, skills shortages, suggest that the industry is no longer judged by better, faster and cheaper. Are we sure, or are we just playing with words? Leaner, cleaner, smarter, less macho? I'm not sure. How dare you, Professor Gorse? You've not only stolen my dreams, but you have built a construction career on sustainability. You are possibly within the top 1% of the planet's polluters. You are responsible for more than twice the carbon pollution as of the 3.1 billion people that make up the poorest half of humanity. You use the most resource and waste too much. You are not a constructor. You are a deconstructor of the environment. You have destabilized the environment that your children will rely on. You continue to buy, build and waste and don't give sustainability anything more than lip service. Let's not carry on like we're doing. We must legislate. We must stop and change rapidly just to make things a little healthier. We are probably kidding ourselves and our children if we think we're going to halt climate change. Much of the ice that has built up over millennia has gone and will take thousands of years to restore. but we should make our air cleaner, restore as much of the ecosystem as we can, and work out how we are going to protect the ecosystem as the planet warms. Construction managers must engage in research that cleans and maintains the ecosystem. My superheroes of tomorrow are not quite ready for the climate change. We've got to do something. There is actually limited supply of fresh liquid water. The atmosphere, or the breathable atmosphere, most of it is only 10 kilometres thick. Once you go up to the top of Mount Everest, most of us would need breathing gear. And let's be really honest, we don't distribute our clean water, our essential resources, equitably. We need to do a lot to restore the planet, and we must stop polluting it. We need to build healthier practices and places to work and to live. Place the natural environment higher and ensure that our ecosystems remain stable. We're in a world of smart transformation. We're a long way off the automation that will take out the construction manager. Whilst the construction manager in this diagram might be suggested to have their contribution reduced, what I see is the construction manager as a knowledge worker being enhanced by the data analytics, by the smart information in their decision-making potential over time. But to achieve this, we've got to have smart and reliable metrics. Currently, we know that there is a transformation of our buildings with smart energy monitoring, smart cars, smart mobile technology, smart weather data. But what are we doing with this data? For the data to be useful, it needs to be reliable, have precision and accuracy. Much of my research is centered on energy efficiency. I talk about the performance gap. But that's just one performance gap. We need to consider how buildings are functions and what their purposes are. And we need to ensure that when something does not have an energy efficiency performance gap, that it also performs on all other criteria which are essential for a fully functioning whole system approach to building. We need to have a reality check. There is much to do with our existing stock which will remain in place for our lifetime and the future generations. Our current approach to retrofit maintenance is at best poor. We will carry on regulating and administrating the impossible until we appreciate that education and research, learning underpins everything we do. Researching, learning underpins construction management. Sometimes we need to stop, press pause, mute. Sometimes we need help. Glasgow Caledonian University's research, which analysed suicide statistics from 2015 and found that the number per 100,000 construction workers rose from 26 to 29 over those 4 years. And the issue is most acute for the construction unskilled workers and blue collar workers, where their suicide rate increased from 48 to just over 73 per 100,000. Mental health has never been more important, yet woefully under-researched and under-supported. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I conclude that I believe that knowledge management, knowledge, education and learning are central to everything we do. And we will continue to learn and move forward. I'd like to dedicate this presentation to John Sturgis, who inspired me to become a learner and a knowledge worker in the education sector. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was a really thought-provoking keynote. Certainly resonated with me. I suppose the underpinning element to take from this presentation is, to me, is researching and learning underpins construction management. That's a really, really key point for me that you actually brought up. But there's much to do in terms of construction management and our contribution as researchers, as learners to the environment and to all the agendas that lie before us in terms of society. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lead into Tara Brooks. Dr. Tara Brooks is a researcher and educator at Queen's University Belfast. And I would say that Tara is an early career researcher, is what I would say. And one of the reasons I chose Tara and contacted Tara in relation to Keynote was the fact that she's actually an early career researcher. And I think she's made great strides in her career. And I just thought it would be a really, really fruitful keynote to give us the perspective from an early career construction management researcher. So I'll press record and we'll listen to Tara, and then we can move into the discussion session following Tara's presentation.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this keynote address. When Lloyd had originally asked me to do this keynote, I was really tempted to turn it down because I'm an early career researcher. I feel like I've got more questions than answers, and I really don't feel like an expert. But I realised that I've got something to add through my industry background and experience. So I hope that you will indulge me as I take you on my journey into construction management and into management research, and then try and relate my experiences back to what I think the future directions and challenges for construction management are. So I took a very circuitous route into construction management. I really fell into it by accident. I started off as an architect, so these images are from my undergraduate degree, which is the Architecture Part 1 in Liverpool University during the early 1990s. So one big advantage of studying architecture is that you normally have really good field trips. So the picture on the top right is of a field trip in Barcelona in my second year of study. The image in the bottom left is of my final year project, which is a new college in Liverpool. I did my Architecture Part 2, which is the second part of the architecture qualification in Bartlett in UCL from 1995 until 1998. So these images are of my sort of final thesis project, which was a genetics lab and museum in Lisbon. And yes, I think I was probably being deliberately provocative, which was rather the kind of fashion back then at the Bartlett. It probably hasn't changed that much either. I spent weeks modelling this project in CAD in 3D. Today, this could be probably drawn in a few hours using Revit or ArchiCAD. London and the Bartlett was a bit of a shock to my system, but I toughed it out, and I think it sort of toughened me up for the years ahead. So in the summer after second year, I got a job working for a company in London called Alex Gordon Partnership. One of the partners was a man called John Reddy, who would go on to become a friend and a mentor. He actually came to my wedding and we still exchange Christmas cards. But over the next few years, I learned a lesson about how brutal the construction industry can be. Alex Gordon Partnership was in financial difficulties with dire results for the partners. And again, I learned a lot about company structures and what that means for the people involved. So Alex Gordon Partnership briefly became Alex Gordon Tweedale before being bought out by the Percy Thomas Partnership. I left Percy Thomas in 2000. In June 2004, Percy Thomas Partnership went into administration. It had had a couple of delays to projects, and a large PFI project was cancelled. But at least this showed, I guess, I wasn't the jinx to the previous companies. So the image shows me in my year out working for Alex Gordon Partnership. As you can see, I am wearing a short skirt and sandals up the crane at Colchester Maternity Hospital. So you can see it's probably not the best attire for a site visit. They were taking the crane down the following week, and I was determined to get up to the top if I could. Not sure this was particularly wise from a health and safety perspective, but anyway, I've got the photographic evidence that I did get up to the top of the crane. From 2000, when I finally qualified as an architect, I got my Part 3 then. Until 2003, I worked for Foster & Partners in London, so I absolutely loved my time there. It was very, very demanding. There was an awful lot of late nights and working weekends, but I really enjoyed it. I was working on some really interesting projects and very high-profile projects. So the top left, I have shown the Willis building, and then on the bottom left, I have shown projects including Spitalfield and London Bridge project. I was promoted to an associate in 2003, and something interesting to note was I had told Fosters that I was pregnant, and they had still promoted me. So maybe it's not so remarkable now, but at the time, this was definitely not the norm in architecture companies. But Rory arrived in November 2002, and everything had changed. So I left Foster & Partners in 2003, as I just couldn't reconcile how I could make caring for a baby, the commute across London, and the demands of working for this kind of top-tier architecture company work. So the company, or my family, moved to York, and I worked part-time for a couple of years, but my career really took a back seat. So in 2004, my family moved back to Belfast, and in 2005, I started working for Todd Architects. And when I'd started working again, sort of full-time, I was really surprised at how much I had missed architecture and a kind of fulfilling career. So I had 5 really happy years at Todd's, moving probably more into project management, and managing the design work for big projects. And this just gives a bit of a sample of some of the projects that I kind of worked on and some of the projects that I led teams for. But yes, in 2010, my career was kind of overtaken by events again. So the Great Recession had hit Northern Ireland really hard. And again, you can see this is an extract from the Northern Ireland Construction Bulletin in the Q3 2014. And I was made redundant from Todd's in 2010, and I was absolutely floored. And I think this has taught me an awful lot about empathy and resilience. At this time, there were no jobs for architects anywhere in Belfast, anywhere in Northern Ireland. So some of my colleagues had left for Australia, and others were just picking up work where they could, working in bars. After several months, I managed to talk my way into a trial period, working part-time in bid management for a building contractor. And actually, this, at the time, it felt dreadful, but it actually turned out to be a really good move for me. Because this then led to a job with Woodville Construction, which is a family-run construction company in the west of Northern Ireland in Omagh, where I loved working, and I really enjoyed working on the contracting side. I got a great amount of satisfaction being part of the team that actually kind of delivers getting a building out of the ground. And And I'm still in touch with an awful lot of the people from this company. If you have a look at the bottom right image, you can just see me there. This was with some of the team posing with Barry McGuigan at the 2017 Construction Employers Federation Awards. And as you can see from this image, you needn't worry about ever meeting me in a dark night or ever hurting anyone in a physical fight. Okay, so in the years 2012 to 2020, I was also studying part-time. So I'd studied a part-time Masters in Queen's in 2012 and graduated in 2014, because you can see this picture in the top left with my dad and my husband at graduation. Then in the PhD, I passed the Viva in March 2020. So I think I probably had the last in-person Viva in the UK before the COVID lockdown happened. The PhD was looking at quality management implementation in the construction sector. Sadly, my dad passed away in 2018, so he didn't get to see me kind of complete or graduate, but he knew that I'd been offered a job in Queen's just before he died, so he was really pleased, and I've always taken great comfort in that. So here I am now. As you can see from the picture and from me here as well, my hair is grey and my kids are not tiny anymore. In fact, Rory, who's the kid you can see closest in the photograph on the right, is heading off to university this October. I can't quite believe it myself. So how can I kind of use this previous experience and apply this to predict some of the challenges that I think the construction management community will face? Okay, so all of these challenges that I can see, I've grouped under the heading of sustainability. The first challenge I can see is the industry can't afford to lose people who aren't offered the flexibility with working in design or construction with having a family, or looking after elderly parents, or just having some sort of a work-life balance. The pandemic has gone some way to offering some people more flexibility, but this isn't universal, and some operatives have to be on site. So I think the industry needs to get creative with working patterns to entice more people to want to work in construction. Okay, then the second challenge, which I think is pretty self-evident, is the climate crisis. The world is on fire, as Greta Thunberg has said, and I think as a research community, we need to think about how we can work together to help put it out. Okay, so the next image is of Siobhan O'Neill. She's the mental health champion for Northern Ireland and Professor of Mental Health Science at Ulster University. So poor mental health is at crisis levels in Northern Ireland. Interestingly enough, during the Troubles, mental health outcomes were actually better, but now there seems to be a real overhang there. We've got real problems in Northern Ireland. In the construction industry and academia, there is a relatively new focus on mental health, but there's still a pressing issue as evidenced by the continuing high levels of poor mental health, self-harm and suicide in the construction industry. And again, I really want to say that I'm so supportive and so grateful for the efforts of Lloyd Scott and Chris Gorse and others in setting up the mental health support network in ARCOM. I think it's a really positive development, and it's something that I'd like to continue to be involved with. Okay, so the next challenge I see is the Edinburgh School scandal and the Grenfell Tower disaster put a new focus on the construction quality issues that are widespread and endemic in the construction industry. It has been an issue for many years. Now, of course, I would say this is going to be an important area because this was the subject of my PhD. But I think that kind of recent high-profile disasters have shown that there's a real need for change and for research into this area, and have led to a renewed focus on quality from industry bodies and regulators. So the 3D drawing below, which I'd shown you previously, of my 5th year architecture thesis project that took me weeks to create, would now be easily put together using a BIM package like Revit or AutoCAD, probably in a matter of hours. So these kind of dumb lines that I had used can now carry huge amounts of information that can be usefully interrogated and analysed. So one massive upside that I see is that some poor architecture student doesn't have to spend weeks putting together door schedules as I had to during my early years of work, and I still remember the sheer mind-numbing boredom of putting together things like door schedules and drawing out room elevations. So hopefully that's freed up kind of people working in construction for more interesting and useful tasks. I don't think I'm saying anything new by commenting that digitalisation on its own can't solve the industry's problems and in some cases can create new ones, but I think as a community we're quite alert to this. But yeah, clearly digitalisation is a challenge and an opportunity. So finally, and I think most importantly from my perspective, from my industry background, if our research doesn't connect to industry, then we're just talking to ourselves. So I have really struggled with this. None of the people that I know that work in construction read academic papers. How can we connect better to industry? I think from my perspective, I think we need to avoid over-complex solutions or devise really detailed taxonomies that would be beyond the resources of most construction companies to use. Perhaps, I don't know, we could think about some ways of connecting better, maybe offer a prize, an ARCOM, for the paper that's had the most direct industry impact over the last 5 years, maybe a longer term recognition of work that's actually had a real impact in industry. To me, this is the most pressing challenge for our community. So thanks very much for joining me. I think there might be some time for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Tara. Really, really thought-provoking, just like Chris's keynote. I suppose encompassing the word sustainability in terms of the headings that you presented, it was really insightful, I felt. And looking at the whole areas of equality, climate crisis, mental health, quality, digitalization, and connection to the industry are really, really all very, very valid. And really, I suppose, the element I'm taking from both keynotes, which, we can see in the chat that people are saying, were excellent keynotes and thought-provoking keynotes. Really, what is resonating with me is complexity. What it was interesting in both presentations was addressing climate change. But also for me, what was interesting was that, there are places in the world that draw us to, and I'm going to use the word built environments rather than construction, but draw us to the built environments. And I just thought it was quite interesting that Chris used the example of the Sagrada de Familia Gaudi church in Barcelona. And Tara was drawing her architectural field trip experience to Barcelona, and Barcelona being one of the key places where I would go in terms of experiencing really, really quality architecture. So thank you both. Apollo is going to manage questions in the chat. If there's any elements that people want to present or make comment on, in terms of discussion, we have 10 minutes or so now to discuss further the two keynotes and take contributions from people. So we would welcome people to ask questions in terms of or pose points in terms of where we're going in construction management. I noticed one of the key discussions that's going on in the chat is around construction management and the term construction management and people's positioning in relation to that, and one or two comments in relation to should it be called built environment research or is it construction management research? And it'd be interesting to hear people's perspective on that, and maybe Tara and Chris would have a point of view on that. if you want to make comments, Tara or Chris.
I guess there's as a community, maybe we think we have a shared understanding about what we mean when we say construction research. I mean, I always think of it as in the widest possible sense. But yeah, I mean, again, maybe built environment, I don't know, is it more wider encompassing? I mean, for me, construction management in the widest possible term does embrace the complexity, and all of the various sub-disciplines, but perhaps that's just my own personal understanding.
Okay. Chris?
I was just thinking this through again as Tara was speaking, but I think construction management, like in medicine, is a general term for the general practitioner. And then within that, we have the specialisms, and I don't see it being a problem for having a specialist within construction management who takes a first degree in construction management to then focus on life cycle analysis or indeed stress management within either the organisations or individuals. I don't see why research has to limit itself within the field. I have been challenged a few times by some of the research that I see that I think, is this construction management? But then I think, well, if somebody thinks it is, who am I to sort of challenge whether it is or not? And I do think, very much like the general practitioner, you sometimes go and they seem to have a lack of knowledge in one area. But if you ask them, they will refer you to the specialist, they'll refer you to the consultant, and you can have that meeting. And I think that's the way that I see the field of construction management. And some have raised also that they put the point about built environments, and I think exactly the same. The School of the Built Environment has a number of strands to it and flavours, and then equally within all of those, even within the sort of civil engineering, you'll see some people focus on the soil structure, some take on concrete chemistry, some on steel, some on metallurgy. So there is a complexity there that I think we should embrace. And a simplicity in some of our research that means it's a very precise discipline. So there's two sort of schools of thought, really, that we have, one of the general practitioner and one of the experts.
Absolutely, Chris. I think you make a really, really good point, and you did actually touch on that in your actual presentation around, we rely on expertise. If we're making, and it's okay not to know everything, and that's why complexity resonates with me. If you want to actually get the inner detail on something and really get good advice, you go to the expert, and there is scope within construction management research to have those areas and key areas where people are specializing. And it reminds me of the PhD process in terms of, undergraduate is very, very broad in terms of what, if you take construction management education gets, and then you may specialize a little bit at master's level, but you actually really delve down into a pocket or a particular topic and get to that specialist expertise knowledge when you do a PhD. And to me, that's an important aspect of our understanding around construction management and our kind of definition of it. You only have to look at the conference here in terms of, the teams that we have. We've 13 teams that from law right across to sustainability and everything in between. And that is just, to me, another example of the complexity and how broad it is, even within construction management. So expanding it out, built environment is an interesting, would be an interesting departure. But it's certainly, Tara?
Sorry, Lloyd, I didn't mean to cut across that. Just to chip in and say, it's interesting. In Queen's, our school has had, architecture declares, and our school has declared a climate emergency. And actually, there were a whole series of events. And what I realised from that was that actually addressing some of these really complex problems, like the climate emergency, will require massive transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, working across boundaries and disciplines and listening to experts, across a whole different series of fields. So yeah, absolutely, we need to rely on expertise across a really wide range to address these really complex problems that are, what's the expression? Wicked problems, I think.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Apollo?
Yes. I just wanted to let the audience know that if you wish to speak, you could send us a message in chat, and then we'll promote you to be able to speak if you are just a participant that is listening in. But as people do that, there's a comment that came through from Chrissy, I think directed to you, Chris, where she was saying that do you feel that current focus on mental health in construction is too focused on the individual, with little attention paid to the organizational and the industrial structures that exacerbate the issue? That's the thing was for you, Chris.
Yeah, I feel mental health is a really complex issue, and I did see that question come up, and I think from a construction organisation perspective, first and foremost, it needs leadership. So it needs leaders to embrace the problem and to recognise that within their own organisation it exists. As a project structure, I'm not sure I see any real research in terms of interdisciplinary projects coming together is how people actually view and manage stress within projects. So that's an interesting topic that I think see people looking at. But I think at the moment it is seen very much as an individual problem rather than as an organisation problem. I see plenty of training exercises that are online and even some support groups. But I have engaged in problems where I've got to be careful, but where individuals have a problem to start with and then almost become the problem themselves while still having the mental health problem there. So they start off with a mental health problem and then actually start causing mental health problems to other people. And then I actually have seen situations where organisations back away because the individual is becoming quite very difficult to handle, yet we still got a mental health problem. And I think that sort of resonates with me with the problems of mental health, is it manifests in so many different ways. So confusion, anger, aggression, violence, withdrawal, lethargy, and we need experts almost within all fields. And we work at home now, so how do we recognise mental health at home? How do we recognise it starting to occur within a group? How do we manage it? How do we manage it with projects? I know personally, when I've been managing groups that seem to be very stressful, and I've looked at the stress management structures that are out there, or the help or the reports that I should fill in, I've often backed away from them until I actually understand what is happening within that stress environment, because I feel that if I start going down formal routes, then I might exacerbate the problem. And largely that's because I don't think we have the expertise or the support the correct support infrastructures around us at the moment. So I really do think there's a need for much more resource in this area. I strive for always challenging myself, and there's a very fine line between that challenge and also collapse. So I don't need too many things go wrong in my personal life for all of a sudden me not to be able to handle quite what I usually handle in my professional world. And I won't jump straight in and tell people I'm having problems at home. So it's something I think we all need to understand better, and the world has got more complex, and hence the reason for some of the problems that we're having is we've introduced so many different ways of manipulating our mind and stimulating our mind and then leaving us alone, sort of isolating us, that I think we really do need to understand quite what we've done with what we're throwing at people, and then also how we manage mental and physical health. I see the two are very closely intertwined, and those who are start off being more isolated than others, and then as we further isolate them in things like lockdown or even project work by giving them solitary work, I think we need to work out whether that's good or bad. But I just call for more research in this area, and people to sort of embrace it, and hopefully come up with better structures. But it's a challenging one. I certainly don't. Experienced quite a number of people I know well having health issues, and some taking their lives. We just need to really understand as best we can how we support people, and it's possibly the ones that are most difficult to support. We should first of all post the ones who are almost isolate themselves by aggression, anger, and causing other people problems. The most difficult people, and we step aside from them, and I would too. It's a challenge. I don't know how we embrace this.
Really thought-provoking, Chris. I'm conscious it's 10:01, and I'd like, the discussion already, in this first hour of ARCOM this morning is really, really positive and engaging. And I suppose even, the link with mental health and construction management research really actually shows where some of the priorities within construction management research might go to. In terms of the future, and particularly linked to the pandemic and the isolation that people will have experienced over the last year and a half or so. Just to draw the session to a close, there's been really some great chat in the chat area, and I suppose I just want to start with. Paul Chan wrote that Stefan Getteleb argues that construction is a political construct to render the industry governable. Built environment takes us beyond the construction process. So again, that's food for thought. And I just just picking out a couple of elements here. Tina Gustafsson, who will be presenting the keynote tomorrow. Tina has mentioned Pekka's comment in relation to widening construction management research is interesting and important, and I will be taking a look about this tomorrow morning, in particular on engaging with urban studies. So I just want to close this section by teeing up tomorrow's keynote, and that that link between construction management research and urban studies and urban planning is a really important to connect, and that we actually tune in for that tomorrow. And in the meantime, let's meet in the cafe to have those general discussions about the elements that have arisen this morning. Because for me, resonating around my head is again that word complexity, and how complex is society, but also the world of construction management research. And hence the desire to actually raise this matter. And if I just might say, over the next year in my tenure as chair, I would like to revisit the area of construction management research by holding a number of workshops where we can invite maybe people to come in and present their case studies and their position as we go forward. So watch this space as construction ARCOM members. And we will be exploring and advancing our understanding of construction management research, and for us all to have a more collective and better understanding. So thank you for your participation this morning. We move now at 10:15. There's a slight break for people to have a comfort break, and we move into the parallel sessions 1. So I'd encourage people to go back to the foyer and look out from the program to see which of those parallel sessions you would like to go into and experience the input from people in terms of their particular research. I look forward to engaging with you all over the next 2 days, and please give us feedback along the way on elements that you're enjoying in particular, but also elements that we may have overlooked. So I look forward to interacting with you. Thank you all for a wonderful kickoff to what will be a great conference over the next 2 days. Thank you.